All right, welcome. Today, we're jumping into a text that lays out what it calls a truly revolutionary digital system. And, it's about way more than just tech. It's pitched as a blueprint for a whole new way of thinking. This all comes from a document called The Necessity of Studying Ash Mufari's On-Passive System. So let's break down what's inside.
So, the text we're looking at kicks things off with this incredibly bold claim. Right from the get-go, it frames the on-passive system not as just some new product, but as a legitimate historical turning point. I mean, the author is setting the stakes about as high as you can right from the very first sentence.
So who's the architect behind this whole thing? Well, the text points directly to founder and CEO Ash Mufari. And according to the author, what he's built isn't just another piece of software. No, it's a full-on paradigm shift, something that apparently requires a totally new mindset just to wrap your head around it.
And that brings us to the first big idea in the text, this concept of a new digital order. And look, the source is really clear about this. We're not just talking about a new app or some platform. What's being pitched here is a completely new philosophy for how we live our digital lives.
Okay, and this is where the language starts to get really, really interesting. Take a look at how the system is defined. The author totally steers clear of the usual tech jargon. Instead, they're using these big, powerful educational metaphors, right? A classroom, a university, a training ground. The focus is clearly on learning and transformation, not just, using a product.
So all of this framing naturally leads to a central question that the text puts forward. Now, for the target audience, who the author calls founders, the answer is presented as totally non-negotiable. The argument is that studying the system isn't just an option, it's a calling. It's framed as an essential duty for anyone who wants to lead in this new age of AI.
Okay, so if it's a calling, what does that actually mean? Well, the next part of the source argues that the system is built from the ground up for active learners. The core idea here is that the real power isn't in just using the tools. It comes from deeply, truly understanding them.
And this lays out the path they propose just about perfectly. The author gives us a really clear three-step journey. First, you study the system. Simple enough. Second, that study leads to a deep understanding. And third, from that understanding, the text claims you gain the influence you need to actually lead.
And this quote, which the text attributes to Ash Mufari himself, just hammers that point home, doesn't it? The message couldn't be clearer. If you want to lead in the future, you have to be learning in the present. It's a really active, you could even say demanding, view of what it's going to take to stay relevant.
So that begs the question, right? What is actually in this system that requires so much study? Well, this next section of the source material dives into what it calls the grand design, and it covers both the practical tools and the much deeper philosophical structure holding it all together.
Okay, so here's where we get into the actual nuts and bolts. The text lists a whole suite of tools, and you'll notice they all have that O prefix. We've got O-Connect, probably for communication, O-Wallet for finance, O-Verify for security, and so on. This is really our first concrete look at just how big this ecosystem is supposed to be. I mean, it seems to cover everything from commerce all the way to data protection.
But then, right after we see that practical list of tools, the language in the source takes this sharp, unexpected turn into the philosophical. Suddenly, the system's design is being described as reflecting, and this is a direct quote, divine order and architectural intelligence. I mean, that's a pretty fascinating leap to make, from software straight to spirituality.
And, according to the source, that blend of technology and spirituality, that's actually the whole point. The author argues that the system's design is the meeting place for human genius and what they call divine guidance. And the purpose of all this? To bring order and clarity to what the text calls a chaotic world. All right, so now we get to the payoff. Why go through all this trouble to master the system? Well, the source spends a lot of time outlining the rewards, the prosperity that's supposedly promised to anyone who really commits to studying and understanding how it all works. The text frames this whole idea around a major shift in mindset. You can see the contrast right here. In the old world, it's all about chasing outcomes. But in this new world, the focus shifts completely to mastering the process. The promise is pretty clear. If you can just get the process right, the results you want will just follow. So what are these rewards exactly? The text lays out a really fascinating mix. On one hand, you've got these tangible things, right? Like financial wisdom and freedom through automation. But then, on the other hand, you have these much bigger, more abstract benefits, like unity with the global community and even a partnership with AI. And according to the source, those rewards are really just the beginning. The final stage of this whole journey isn't just about what you get, it's about who you become. The ultimate promise here is all about personal transformation.
And this right here is the ultimate transformation promised in the text. It's this idea that you evolve from being just a passive user of technology into a digital visionary. And what's a digital visionary? Well, according to the author, it's someone who gets to actively shape the future.
Now, the conclusion of the text takes this whole idea to another level entirely. I mean, look at this. The act of studying the system is framed not just as learning, but as an act of worship and gratitude. The author is literally describing interacting with a digital platform as a kind of spiritual practice. It's pretty incredible.
The source closes with this really powerful, almost poetic idea. It perfectly captures the core argument of the whole text. You study the system that Ashmufera built, and in return, it builds you. So it's not just about you learning to use a tool. The claim is that the tool fundamentally changes who you are. What a bold and transformative claim to end on.
All right, welcome. Today we are diving into a really fascinating text that lays out this incredibly radical vision for a new digital kingdom, one that's designed to completely upend and redistribute global wealth. I mean, it is a huge claim, so let's get right into what's behind it.
So, right out of the gate, the language in the source material is, well, it's intense. It frames being a part of this as more than just a choice. It's like you're part of a destiny. This whole idea of being chosen for a reformation, it sets this almost spiritual tone that you'll see keeps coming up.
So you have to ask, who's the architect of this massive vision? The text points to one person, Ashmufera. And what's really important here is that he's not just presented as some CEO. No, he's framed as the visionary leader of a whole global movement. Okay, so what's the problem this whole system is trying to solve? According to the text, it all comes down to access. The argument is that the world's wealth is basically locked away, trapped behind all these barriers that even hard work can't get you through. This new digital ecosystem is positioned as the key, the one tool that can finally knock down those walls. And this is where the way it's all framed gets really, really interesting. The source is very clear. This is not just another business. It's called a divine design. And that choice of words is totally deliberate. It's meant to elevate the whole thing from just a company to a moral mission, one that's all about restoring fairness to the entire world. So that's the big, grand vision. But how is this supposed to actually work? Well, the answer, according to the text, is all in a set of interconnected AI-powered tools. At the very heart of everything is AI automation. The source paints this as the engine that does all the heavy lifting for you. The marketing, the payments, the customer service, so that people are free to just focus on being creative and running with their ideas.
Next up, you've got the financial engine, which is called the O-Wallet. The text says this is the key to achieving what it calls digital sovereignty. Basically, it's a system for making instant, borderless payments that aims to give people, and it even claims entire nations, total financial control outside of the whole traditional banking system. Of course, if you're building a global system, you have to be able to talk to each other, right? That's where O-Connect comes in. It's presented as a video platform with built-in AI-powered translation. The goal is to let anyone, anywhere, collaborate on business or education without language ever being a barrier again. Then you have the whole commercial side of things, O-Shop, which is basically a global marketplace. The vision here is that a small business, say, in Kenya or India, could use the platform's AI to just seamlessly sell their products to customers anywhere on the planet.
Look, none of this works if you can't trust the system. And that's why the source introduces O-Verify. It's the security layer, an identity verification system that's designed to make sure everyone is who they say they are, building a safe digital space for the whole ecosystem. And finally, there's the social glue holding it all together. The source groups a few apps like O-Peer, O-Pal, and O-Chat. It doesn't go into detail on each one, but it calls them the social heart of the platform, the bridges of human experience meant to connect everybody. Now, beyond all the tech, the source material actually spends a lot of time talking about the philosophy, the why behind it all. It describes this as more than just a tech revolution, it's a revolution built on a foundation of ethics.
Okay, so the first big principle, according to the source, is all about being inclusive. The claim is pretty straightforward. Every single person who joins, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, gets access to the exact same powerful set of tools. It's all about creating a totally level playing field for success. The next guiding principle is all about your security and your privacy. The text really hammers on this idea of data sovereignty. It's a promise that your identity, your money, and all your personal data are locked down and protected. This is positioned as like a fundamental right within this new digital world. Here's another really crucial point the source makes. This is all about the long game. It's very careful to say that this is a tool for building sustainable digital businesses. It's not a get-rich-quick thing. The whole focus, it claims, is on creating real, lasting value. And this quote, this one really pulls that whole philosophy together, doesn't it? What it's doing is completely reframing the idea of progress. It's trying to shift us away from thinking of the world as this competitive, zero-sum game and toward a new model where connection and empowerment are what really matter. So let's talk for a minute about the people who are actually involved in this. Because the source doesn't just call them users or customers, oh no, it gives them a much, much bigger title. They're called founders.
And that choice of words is so deliberate. Founders aren't just early adopters. They're being positioned as pioneers, the very first citizens of what this text is calling a new global order. It gives them this incredible sense of historical importance.
The source then lays out this four-step mission for every founder. It's a journey. First, you just witness this whole digital reformation happening. Then, you actively participate in it. From there, you prosper because of it. And finally, you take on this role of carrying the legacy forward for others.
And that all brings us to the final part of the text. It really reads like this powerful call to action, a vision of what the source describes as a global awakening. The ultimate message here is really a blend of two things. It's not just about AI, and it's not just about e-commerce. The core idea is that this whole movement fuses that cutting-edge technology with a higher purpose, a humanitarian one, where progress and peace can actually go hand in hand. And the text wraps up with this incredibly powerful statement that sounds like it was pulled right out of a history book. It frames this whole project as a defining moment in time, the very beginning of digital freedom, giving credit to both the visionary leader and those courageous people who jumped in first. So we'll just end on the central question that this whole text really leaves you with. It paints this picture of a future where wealth isn't tied to banks anymore, but to belief. What a world governed by that principle would actually look like? Well, that's the idea we'll leave you to think about. Thanks for tuning in. All right, in this explainer, we're jumping into something really big. We're looking at a source that lays out this idea of a digital kingdom. And get this, it's not pitched as just another business. No, it's framed as a system that's meant to totally overhaul how global prosperity works. So you gotta ask, what's really behind a vision that huge? Okay, so the core claim here is, well, it's massive. We're talking about a single system that's supposed to be able to change the entire game of how wealth is made and shared around the world. I mean, wow. So let's kick things off by digging into how exactly this vision is laid out.
So where does this all begin? Well, the story really starts with this huge vision from the founder, Ash Mufareh. He's framing this whole thing as the answer to a problem that's been around forever, right? The idea that wealth is just stuck, trapped, in the hands of a few, and totally out of reach for most people.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Just look at the language being used here. The source doesn't talk about this like it's just some tech platform. It uses phrases like divine design. I mean, that's not your typical startup talk, is it? It really lifts the whole thing from just a business idea to something way bigger. It's pitched as a mission, a quest to fix the world's economic balance.
And this idea of wealth as a flow, that's a really key concept here. Think about it. Instead of wealth being like a stagnant pond that only a few people have access to, the vision is to turn it into a river, a constantly moving current of value and opportunity that anyone, anywhere can tap into.
Okay, so you've got this massive world-changing vision. But a vision is just a vision without the tools to make it happen, right? It needs an engine. So let's pop the hood and take a look at the technology. The source breaks down the key pieces of tech that are supposed to be the building blocks for this whole new digital world.
First up, we have AI automation. This is described as the absolute backbone of the whole system. The idea is simple. Let the AI do all the heavy lifting, the tedious stuff like marketing, payments, all that back-end communication.
This way, people are free to do what people do best, be creative, instead of getting bogged down in technical details.
Then we've got the O-wallet. And listen to this framing. It's pitched as the key to digital sovereignty. That's a pretty powerful term. It's basically a tool for super fast, secure payments that can cross any border, with the goal of giving you total control over your own finances, completely separate from the old-school banking system. Now, if you're going to build a global system, everyone needs to be able to talk to each other, right? That's where OConnect comes into the picture. It's described as a communication tool that uses AI to translate conversations in real time. The goal? To just erase those language barriers and let people from totally different backgrounds work together effortlessly.
Next up is OShop, and this one really paints a picture of what they mean by leveling the playing field. It's an e-commerce platform where a small business owner, doesn't matter if they're in Ghana or India or anywhere else, can supposedly use the exact same powerful AI tools as some giant multinational corporation. It's all about giving the little guy a global stage. All right, so when you have all this global activity, all these transactions flying around, trust becomes everything. You have to know who you're dealing with, and that's where O-Verify is supposed to come in. It's the security and ID system designed to make sure every single interaction is safe and transparent. It's all about building that solid foundation of trust. And finally, it's not all just business and transactions. There's a human side to it. You've got O-Peer, O-Pal, and O-Chat, which are described as the social heart of this whole ecosystem. The source says their real purpose goes beyond business. It's about creating real, genuine connections between people and building communities that span the globe.
Okay, so that's the what. We've seen the tools, the tech, the nuts and bolts, but the source material makes it really clear that the why is just as important, if not more so. So let's shift gears and look at the philosophy, the big ideas that are supposedly driving this whole thing.
At its heart, the core belief is pretty simple. Technology has to serve people, not the other way around, especially AI. The idea is that it should be a tool to create new opportunities, to empower us, not to replace us or just make the powerful even more powerful.
And this philosophy isn't just a vague idea. It's broken down into these core principles. It's all about things like making sure growth includes everyone, giving you, the user, control over your own data, and choosing connection over cutthroat competition. It's a pretty clear stance on empowerment versus exploitation.
Now, a movement, a revolution, it doesn't happen on its own. It needs people. And in this story, the early adopters get a very special name. They're called the Founders, and they're positioned right at the center of this entire narrative. And just listen to how they're spoken to in this quote. It's not like, hey, thanks for signing up for our app. It's, you were chosen. Chosen to be part of the greatest digital reformation of our time. I mean, that's heavy stuff. It frames their role as this incredible privilege, but also a massive responsibility.
This right here really lays it all out in black and white. It's like a before and after picture. On one side, you've got the old world as they describe it. Wealth is trapped, banks call the shots, and everyone's frustrated. And on the other side, that's the promise. A world where wealth flows, ethics and hard work matter most, and it all leads to real empowerment and opportunity.
So you see, being a founder here isn't just about being a customer. Not at all. They're described as pioneers, as ambassadors who are out there building this new digital frontier. The source even calls them the guardians of the new wealth. It's a huge title.
Okay, so all of this, the tech, the philosophy, the founders, it's all leading somewhere. So what's the end game? What is the ultimate goal here? The source frames it as something massive, a global awakening.
And we're not just talking about money anymore. The ultimate destination described here is a future where technology and compassion are fused together, where progress and peace go hand in hand. We're talking about a fundamental shift in the entire operating system of the world. And this huge legacy is supposed to happen in a few key stages. First, the goal is to totally redefine how national economies even work. Then, that's meant to inspire governments to be more transparent. After that, it's about making every small business a global player. And the final step? To bring about what the source calls the digital freedom of nations.
And the source wraps it all up with this final, powerful message to its followers. It's a call to action, really. A message about keeping the faith, staying focused, and sticking together, with the promise that if they do, the whole world will rise right along with them. So, let's wrap this up. What have we seen? Our source material has laid out this massive digital ecosystem. It's powered by AI, but it's all wrapped up in this philosophical, almost spiritual mission to completely change the game on wealth and empower all of humanity.
And that really leaves us with one big question to chew on, doesn't it? When you take cutting-edge technology and you merge it with this language of faith, of destiny, of a divine purpose, that's a potent mix. It really makes you wonder what happens when technology stops being just a tool and starts being presented as a divine mission.
All right, so today we're jumping into the tech behind the OnPassive ecosystem. The source material we're looking at says it's built on 3 main pillars: incredible speed, a really powerful AI brain, and security that's like a fortress. Let's dig into what that all actually means. So the source material really kicks things off with this huge statement. It's not just talking about apps for right now. The vision they're painting is a complete superstructure for the future. This really sets the stage for some pretty ambitious claims about the technology. Okay, that's a big vision, right? So the question is, what's actually under the hood? What's the tech that's supposed to make all this happen? Well, according to the source, it all begins with a foundation of just raw performance. All right, let's get into the first pillar. And this one is all about performance. We're talking 2 things here: insane speed and the ability to scale up to a massive global level.
And it all starts with speed. The core idea being presented here is that speed isn't just some bonus feature. It's the absolute foundation. It's what's supposed to make the whole user experience feel powerful, instant, and, actually work.
So how do they claim to get this kind of speed? Well, the source points to a whole stack of interesting tech. You've got things like edge computing. That's basically bringing the data physically closer to you so there's less lag. Then there's parallel processing, which is a fancy way of saying it can juggle millions of tasks at the same time. It also mentions AI-powered caching to guess what you'll need next and have it ready, plus load balancing and auto-scaling to handle huge spikes in traffic without ever crashing. It's a lot of moving parts working together. Okay, let's zoom in on one of those: dynamic load balancing. What is that? Think of it like a super smart traffic cop for the entire network. When tons of people log on, it doesn't just send them all down one road. It intelligently spreads them out across a bunch of different servers. The result? No single server gets overloaded, and the whole system stays smooth and stable, even when it's packed. So what's the big payoff for all that fancy infrastructure? According to the source, it's pretty simple. No more traffic crashes and no downtime. The goal they're describing is a system that just works all the time, no matter what. Okay, so pillar 1 is speed. The system's fast. But now we get to pillar 2, which is all about making it smart. This is what the source calls the intelligent core. We're talking about the AI and automation that's basically the brains of the whole operation.
And this quote from Ash Mafera really nails the philosophy here. Why work hard when your system can think harder? It's all about shifting that effort from you, the user, onto the technology itself. Letting the system do the heavy lifting. Now, the source lays out a few key ways the AI is supposed to work. You've got your predictive engines, your smart recommendations, but honestly, the most fascinating concept mentioned here has got to be this idea of self-healing code. Self-healing code. What does that even mean? Well, the way it's described is pretty wild. Basically, the AI is always watching the system 24/7. And when it spots a bug or something weird, it doesn't just flag it for an engineer to fix later. It actually tries to fix it itself right then and there in real time. The goal here is to seriously boost how reliable the whole system is. And this intelligence isn't just about fixing things behind the scenes. The source describes it as a tool to automate all sorts of complex jobs. We're talking about everything from running your marketing campaigns to handling customer signups and payments, all pretty much on autopilot. So when you boil it all down, what's the point of all this high-tech automation? It really comes down to one thing: getting rid of the tedious busy work. The source frames this as giving founders the ultimate gift, the gift of time. All right, so we've got a system that's fast, and it's intelligent. That brings us to the third and final pillar, making it unified and super secure. So how do all the pieces fit together, and how do you keep all that data safe? And this really gets at a problem we've all felt, right? The old way is juggling a dozen different logins, using apps that don't speak to each other, and constantly re-entering the same information. The OnPassive way, as it's described, is a totally unified ecosystem. One login, one platform, and everything just syncs instantly. And because everything is connected, your data can move between the apps seamlessly and safely. So for example, you could run a big webinar using OConnect, then take payments right after with OWallet, and see all the data in OTracker, all without ever having to export or re-enter a single thing. It's all just there. Okay, But how do you protect all that valuable data? The source uses this great phrase, an invisible fortress. And this isn't just one thing, it's a whole layered defense system. It includes things like an identity verification system using blockchain for super secure transactions, AI that's constantly hunting for threats, and of course, end-to-end encryption.
So the whole security philosophy here is described as being proactive, not just reactive. The idea is that the AI is like a 24/7 guard, constantly patrolling and defending the system. It's not just secure, the term they use is self-defending.
So we've gone through the three big tech pillars: speed, intelligence, and security. But beyond that, the source material kind of zooms out to talk about the bigger mission. This part isn't just about the what, it's about the who it's all for.
And a huge theme here is this idea of being global, of being without borders. The technology, as described, is designed from the very beginning to be used by anyone, anywhere on Earth, without the usual barriers of language or location getting in the way.
And they're not just saying that. The source points to actual features meant to make this happen. We're talking about AI that understands multiple languages, real-time translation built right in, interfaces that automatically adjust to different currencies and time zones, and even tools to help users with disabilities.
And this final quote really brings everything home. The new system is faster, safer, and smarter. But most importantly, it's fairer. So it's not just about the tech being cool. The bigger claim here is that it's about fairness.
So really, what the source is presenting is this idea that the whole project is a combination of two things: top-tier engineering on one hand, and a real sense of human compassion on the other.
So the source material leaves us with this final thought. It describes a system that aims to be faster, smarter, and fairer. And the question it kind of leaves you with is, what does the future actually look like when technology's main goal is compassion?